it's getting late early. I think I've said that line. You've heard that line a lot, I think, talking about baseball. But let's talk about a few guys that have underperformed or teams that have underperformed that need to bounce back. And I think first and foremost, a guy that has been a focus of the hobby, especially Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who has been one of the most highly touted prospects of all time. And last year showed some signs, especially in that second half, that he is going to be the real deal. He's still just 21 years old. I think we always have to remember that. It's hard, though, when you see Juan Soto doing what he's doing. Right. And you're like, well, Vlad Guerrero Jr., he's the same age. Why is he doing it? And he hit a third home run yesterday in the final game, I think, against the Rays. So I think he is starting to turn it on a little bit. But, boy, I'd really like to see him have a nice second half of the season here.
Yeah, and when he said last year that he didn't work out at all, I think it kind of like looks bad now that he doesn't work out.
Shades of Pablo Sandoval all over again, just rushing back to my memory with that quote. Yeah.
Right, yeah. He's like, I don't need to lift at all, and I was like, wow. I mean, I know the English isn't correctly there. Maybe he didn't exactly mean he doesn't work out at all. Maybe he's just doing the treadmill.
Something lost in translation.
Weights. But, I mean, I was always concerned with him from the beginning as far as that big body. I mean, with you looked at Prince Fielder's career, and it ended kind of short. I mean, he had a great 4 or 5 year span, was smashing home runs, and you kind of see that kind of body style with Vlad. Except Vlad's a third baseman, right? So I mean, there's a lot more movement compared to first base on the third base side. But I would like nothing more. Vlad, he's a sweet guy. I mean, his dad's a Hall of Famer. I've always been a fan of his dad. I've always been a fan of him. And I mean, Toronto. I mean, they have so many prospects. I think they draft every former player's kid that comes up through the system. I mean, anyone that's played before, they draft them. So, I mean, if there's a Bonds coming up, I'm sure he'll be on.
I think Darren Baker is coming up soon. So maybe next year's draft, he's a Blue Jay.
On the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
I mean, was it Bichette, Biggio, Conine? I mean, it's incredible their amount of former players, kids on their team. But yeah, I want to see Vladdy succeed, and I mean that ferocious swing he's got. I mean, it's going to be It's going to be top 10 on SportsCenter when it happens, but it's just not happening frequently enough this year.
Yeah, not quite yet. And I think even that whole Blue Jays team, I don't know if I expect them to be a playoff team this year, but with the shortened season, I kind of thought, you know what, they could surprise a lot of people. They are starting to look a little bit better. I think Teoscar Hernandez is just raking right now for them. Bo Bichette, though, unfortunately on the injured list. So it's now it's a huge time now for Vlad Guerrero Jr. to step up.
Well, and keep in mind, they're like the Chargers of baseball.
Right.
So
no home right now.
Forever a road team. So, I mean, I know that shouldn't factor in, but you're used to your home park as far as defensively. When you're an outfielder, you know where you need to play, where you need to be, and you kind of used to the crack of the bat, the way that it sounds, the way the ambiance is. So there is a little bit probably you're going to play in something new. It's going to take some getting used to. Throw in COVID, no fans. I'm not giving excuses to them, but they are like the Chargers.
Yeah, that's a great point. It is. They are a very unique situation compared to the rest of baseball. Let's talk about another guy who can hit the ball a very, very long way, and that would be Pete Alonso of the New York Mets, who just came out of nowhere last year. And, he had great numbers in the minor leagues, but a guy who was, again, never really a top prospect, and then he goes ahead and hits over 50 home runs for the Mets as a rookie last year. He has gotten off to an extremely slow start. You see him there with his teammate Dominic Smith, who has really picked up the slack with him. What do you expect for the panda here, or the polar bear? Excuse me, I'm calling him. I got my bears mixed up. The polar bear for Pete Alonso. He's just not quite gotten it going, and this Mets team, I think, because of that, has really had a slow start.
Well, he opens up baseball cards with his teeth, so that was a knock for me.
That ain't good for a lot of reasons.
On the million card rip party he was doing with us. But some of these guys, I don't want to like compare them to like an Adam Dunn, but you have this freshman year of these pitchers not knowing where your zone is, stuff like that. You're hitting bombs, you win the home run derby. Sometimes these guys watch a lot of tape in the offseason and they find where the holes are at.
Yeah.
And it's going to be up to him to kind of break from this and find out where, he can get his swing back. But, like these guys that just are mashers, sometimes they either go like towards the Adam Dunn route where they're going to strike out 200 times a year and occasionally get a home run. I hope that's not the case for Pete Alonso, but you have Cespedes leaving the team, so less protection in that lineup for him, and the Mets kind of seem a little bit like a mess right now. So I mean, if Pete starts mashing, gets back on track, and maybe it's just a little bit of a sophomore slump he's going to break out of, and he's going to get back. I mean, we saw it with Judge. I think Judge had it towards the end of his rookie, or no, was it his sophomore? But he hit a wall for a couple months.
Yeah, he did. And it might be happening here with Alonso. And obviously, these are a lot of talented players who the proper training regimen, the proper off-season training, they weren't able to follow through with it because their spring training got halted,
right.
And then they were sitting on the couch, a lot of them, for or working out in an apartment or in a garage for about 3-4 months. So everything is a little rusty right now. I think you can even see the numbers offensively across baseball are down right now. The pitcher injuries are way up right now. So yeah, I think Pete Alonso is going to be fine in the long run. Maybe he starts to get on a hot streak here as we head out of August and into September. But yeah, I think he's just like a lot of people, where it's a mix of the sophomore slump, it's a mix of a weird training regimen, and that Mets team you said is a bit of a mess. Definitely a team that I think its parts are better than when you put it all together. For some reason, it's just not quite working. It's a lot of talent.
Yeah, and I just look at it like Cespedes being one of the bigger names in that locker room. It'd be one thing if he just opted out and didn't show up and play, but to actually try and play, and as a teammate of him, you're like, well, why? You're like, it kind of brings morale down, right? Right. You're trying to do this thing, your 60-game season, and this guy just doesn't show up. People are wondering if he's alive.
Goes AWOL. Yeah, he totally went AWOL.
And then he's just like, hey, by the way, I'm out. And it's just like, well, what's going on? Where's the chemistry? I mean, it brings morale down. It's just like a workplace. Fair. If all of a sudden you were working on a project with somebody, and then all of a sudden they're just like, hey, I'm going to sit out for like a year. And you're like, what? Right. I mean, you're going to be like, this is weird.
Yeah, exactly. Another player in New York who is having some struggles right now, and probably is one of the very few Yankees who's actually having some struggles right now, but Gleyber Torres, who another guy who was a hot name in the hobby for a while, I'm sure, where he comes up with the Cubs and then gets traded over to the Yankees and really had a breakout year last year. Looked like he is primed and ready. I saw him in commercials this offseason, and I'm like, here he is, Gleyber Torres. He's going to be one of the faces of baseball, and he made that shift permanently to shortstop now, and he's had some growing pains. He's kind of relearning the position, and I think that those struggles have also shown up at the plate, where maybe he's focusing maybe a little too much on trying to get everything just right at shortstop, and I think maybe kind of mentally, I think he may not be in the right place right now, but luckily for the Yankees, they've got so much other talent that they can make up for the loss of Gleyber at the plate in the meantime while he tries to figure things out defensively at short.
Now, this may be an obvious question, but I want to ask you, in terms of the Yankees, the Yankees have always had a guy that's the guy, right? So they've had Derek Jeter, obviously, until he retired.
Yeah.
Is that guy Aaron Judge?
I think it is right now. But I really think that Gleyber Torres could be the guy next. And Judge is a phenomenal power hitter. He's got some great. He even is a pretty good defender as well. So I think that he is definitely the face of that team right now. But I think also if everything goes according to plan, Gleyber will be the guy, and I think New York loves that position, that shortstop position, and they can get attached to those guys who make those amazing plays, and and he's a good-looking guy, and he's got that. Everything about him to me screams this is the new face of the Yankees if he can put it all together. Right now it's Judge, but I think if Gleyber can figure things out at short, I think he is the new face of this team, but there's so many other guys coming in the pipeline. Obviously, Jason Dominguez could be right next to him in that lineup for many years to come, and the Yankees are going to have a lot of faces of the Yankees for the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, what was it? Was it 5 or 6 years ago when it was just an absolute sell-off? The Yankees just basically right after Jeter, actually Jeter might have still been there, but they just got rid of everybody. But they just made the right moves. It's incredible.
A one-year rebuild, really.
That's really all it was. I mean, yeah, didn't they go from 1 year to being like
and
bottom, and then they made it to the playoffs the next year?
They weren't even a losing team that year. I think that's the thing I always forget. They were like, I think maybe second or third in the wild card standings, and to them that is like, we've hit the bottom. We got to rebuild, and then they're right back. I think they were in the ALCS a year later. So
yeah, I mean they got Gleyber Torres from the Cubs, as you mentioned. I mean, one guy that I don't think has panned out for them is Clint Frazier. I think that they got for the Indians, who was a huge prospect. But they've found ways through their minor league system to get. I mean, then signing obviously Stanton and Garrett Cole. And, they went from zero to hero. And you know, if you're a fan of like other teams out there that have never done this, you're just like, can we, do what the Yankees did?
Right.
I mean, it's like you got so many people, and it's easy when you have a big market and you have money to spend, but some of these other teams wish they could turn around that fast.
But to then like even, they get all these top rated prospects, but then to like stumbled onto Gio Urshela, who becomes a part of the middle of that order. Luke Voigt, who was always kind of like a fringe guy. And then suddenly he's a middle of the order guy there. So even that, it's just like, come on, guys, like at least something has to go wrong for you, and it just never does.
Yeah, and then last year, like everybody was hurt, and they just kept winning. It was like I think they had the most injuries, and they were leading the league. It was just like incredible what the Yankees were doing.
And we'll wrap things up with two teams that overall I think are just about to make that turn to become big-time contenders, that become very dangerous teams. First of all is the defending champions, the Washington Nationals, and they've had kind of a weird year. Steven Strasburg is hurt right now. He just got placed on the IL. Of course, there were delays very early in the season when the Marlins outbreak happened, so they got delayed. There have been tons of rain delays for them. If you remember that opening night,
he got kicked out of a game.
He just got kicked out of that game, and then had to
from the stands.
Walked up to go get a beer or something when he gets thrown out of the game or something. I don't know. It was a weird look. And of course, you remember that opening night where it was just like a storm of the century ripped through Washington D.C. and they've dealt with rain. So it's been this weird, disjointed year. And Juan Soto was out at the beginning of the year with a bunch of false positives, false negatives with COVID, and no one knew what was going on. But he's back on the field and looks like Fernando Tatis is still maybe my pick for NL MVP. But after maybe a slower week from him, Juan Soto is looking as good as anybody for a candidate for MVP in the National League.
Yeah, I mean, and the guy's back to ferocious swings. Another guy that's just got a beautiful swing out there. And those good names you mentioned, I mean, I think last year we were kind of struggling with who's going to be the face of baseball. And I think in our podcast last year, we were talking about Bryce Harper. I think you've got Tatis, Judge, Soto, Trout. I think you've got some strong names. Now, we were clowning on baseball earlier in this segment, but I think you've got some really big baton holders that are going to be here to stay for a very, very long time. I mean, how old is Soto? Is he 2021 right now?
I don't even think he's 20. I think he will be 22 at the end of the year, if not 21. And he's very young still. He's got so much time left.
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, he's pretty much a five-toed player. And, I mean, I don't know what Bryce Harper is thinking about. What I would love to see what he said about last year, because, they go and he doesn't get anywhere with them, and then he leaves and they win a championship.
Yeah, they bet on Soto. Yeah. They bet on Soto and Robles and that young outfield, said we don't need Bryce, and they were right. And I think they're going to be proven right again. I think that if this team can put the pieces together, I mean, the pitching staff, even without Strasburg, I think they can more than handle his absence for the meantime. The offense, it can be, even without Rendon this year, which I think was a huge loss, I think a bigger loss than Bryce Harper. That's something I think they're going to have to persevere. But again, you just have to be one of the top 8 teams and top 2 in the division, and you're in the playoffs. So I think this team is easily one of the 8 best in the National League.
Absolutely.
And if they get there, they're dangerous.
And as we know as Giant fans, you have to get hot at the right time. So, those Giant teams that won were not even close to being the best talented team in the league at the time of our 3 World Series championships. And, it's going to be whoever, goes into the postseason 5-game winning streak and just has ultimate confidence. And, I think the Nationals are a team that could be poised for that.
Absolutely. And one last one from the American League. Man, did you see what the Chicago White Sox did to the Cardinals yesterday?
Back to back.
Crazy. The 4 guys you see on screen. And it's not just that there was 4 guys, just random guys. These are like the guys who are expected to be the stars of this team. Moncada, Yasmani Grandal, Eloy Jimenez, Jose Abreu. It just would have been perfect if they had gone back to back to back to back to back. And it was Luis Robert who maybe got that fifth one. It was just like, here you go. Here's the future of the Chicago White Sox right in front of you. I think this is a team that I know they're 500 right now. I think they're even still in a playoff position technically, but I think this team can be even better than what we've seen. Their offense is there. Everybody, a lot of those guys have arrived. So they are good to go. But it's just like Lucas Giolito hasn't quite put it together yet. Gio Gonzalez, who was kind of expected not to be an ace, but like the third or fourth starter to eat up innings, give you an ERA floating around 4 to the high 3s, and just give you reliable starts. And he's just been a mess, and the bullpen has had its problems. So I think if the pitching can really figure things out, if Giolito can get back on track, I think the Twins have pretty much got the division in hand. But with all that internal strife going on in Cleveland right now, the whole Mike Clevenger, Zach Plesac's excellent adventure situation, I think that second spot is totally up for grabs now.
Yeah, and I mean, if the White Sox don't do it this year, I mean, they're poised. I mean, all those guys are pretty young. I remember, Abreu's getting a little bit up there, but I remember him and Chris Bryant was the first Bowmans in 2014 that we were going after, and he's had some solid seasons, but just completely underrated. Like, people just don't mention him. And then getting Eloy from the Cubs, getting Moncada from the Red Sox, putting these pieces together. And now with Luis Robert, I mean, you could have a lineup of 8 to 9 guys in this White Sox team that could go for 30 to 40 home runs each. I mean, you could be talking about a team when a full season comes around that they could just have the most home runs as a team of all time easily.
Yeah, they're going to be a really fun team. If, like you said, if not this year, in the coming years, they're going to be really fun. They don't even have Michael Kopech right now.
I was going to say,
was that top pitcher that they were expecting to be their ace. And they get him back next year, and you've got Giolito hopefully back to normal if he fixes his problems. Man, oh man, I think this team is going to be really dangerous for a long, long time.